Oh man. So like, yes, it just sucks. Well, okay, so not
Sorry to hear.
okay. Yeah, let me rephrase that. So I should feel fortunate that I have a job. Um, I think even this week there's just been maybe more layoffs across the board, and so it's like unfortunate, but it's so hard because it's just like
Yeah.
it's crazy, right? Because you know with all the layoffs come then you're basically expected to cover for the shortfall, right? Which company is like, oh, it's no problem. It's like you can pick up work and you'll deprioritize. Actually, if anybody is not in tech, you'll hear the word prioritize and impact used quite often as a way to say like you don't have to do everything, but in reality you end up having to do everything
Yeah.
still.
Okay. Um, I so I'm doing my contract stuff, but I interviewed with a startup, but
How'd it go?
it went well, I think. But then the reason I'm bringing it up is because earlier when you were just talking about, just pains of working full time and not being like having fun with the work and all that. I just
Yeah.
it sounds like it'd be fun, but at the same time, I'm enjoying things right now. like like not a ton of stress, kind
Yeah.
of just paving my own path. Uh, and so it's one of those things where it's if as I continue to talk with more companies to
Hmm.
join back up,
Right.
I just really need to figure out what I want to do.
It's hard, right? And I feel like this is where I empathize with Gen Z and like how they always get kind of like knocked because it's because you're lazy and stuff, and it's like I feel like they have like the benefit of the challenges that our generation has had to endure,
Yeah.
right? And so they're able just to, I guess it just epitomizes this generation where everything moves so fast. They just like skip a couple of steps, right? Can they skip a decade and come to that realization that yeah, you guys spend all your time working, but you're not really doing what
Yeah.
you enjoy or and stuff.
I always think back to my career journey, and it wasn't
Mm,
all roses, right?
no.
Like I mean, so if you didn't know this, my dad had passed away when I was 17. Um,
Oh no.
and so this was like my going into my senior year of high school,
Wow.
and quite honestly, like I didn't really have much guidance of what to do, right?
Yeah.
Because of that, my mom, she didn't graduate from college. She didn't do
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, so she couldn't be as helpful as like my dad could have been. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, like out of like in college, I made bad decisions with taking on more loans than I needed.
Uh-huh.
I went to Vegas for the first time. Um, Took out cash advances from my
Oh
credit
no.
card
Oh
to
no.
gamble. Long story short, like my first, I'd say 10 years after college was pretty hard financially. Like
Mm.
I had to rebuild my credit. I was
Mm-hmm.
my first like 3 years after graduating college, I was constantly being chased down by collections because
Oh
I was just
no,
not paying
really?
like some of the
Wow.
bills. Because I was
Yeah.
living check to check. I mean, definitely I've been there. And so I had to rebuild my credit. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it was about the time when I got to, I think, 30 ish, maybe 30 or
Mm-hmm.
30, maybe even 33.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is when I really got to a point where I fixed my credit. I was making, a good amount of money to not live check to check.
Yeah.
But then it took another, I'd say 6 or 7 years to really
Mm-hmm.
get to a place now where I'm 40
Yeah.
now, to where I'm actually feel like I'm at least not financially stressed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's a really good feeling. But
Yeah.
my first 15 years of my adulthood were definitely a struggle.
Um, yeah, no, I didn't hit my comfortability stride, same thing. Like, oh gosh, until yeah, like my late 30s, so I'm like behind.
Yeah.
Um,
I've felt behind too myself, always.
my first job out of college was at a startup, and I was making 30,000 a year.
Yeah.
Um,
My first job was
and
at
then when
Microsoft, but it was like a
wow,
contract,
mm,
and I was making $16 an hour.
yeah,
So what is that?
and so
640 times 33,200 a
yeah,
year.
yeah, right. So when I see people today, they're like, oh gosh, only making like 60, 70,000, especially these, tech engineers. I'm like, you guys, like literally, even back then, accounting for inflation, I wasn't, it was like not not great. It was
Yeah.
just enough to like pay off loans. Had loans, had a lot of loans. Also,
Yeah.
because like my family wasn't rich by any stretch of the means.
Same here. And it was a lot of hard work and just like dedication and just, making sure that
Yeah,
you're doing good stuff.
yeah. I wasn't starting a side business while I was in undergrad. I was like I was not bussing tables. I was serving tables like at
Yeah.
a restaurant, right? It wasn't. It's like I feel like sometimes you see it you read on the internet. It's like, oh yeah, I was running this side hustle and I was making 100,000 a year on this business of doing whatever. And I'm like, come on, really?
My big accomplishment for 40. It's weird how these things happen because I always have these goals, like financial stuff, and they all seem
Hmm.
to I mean, they seem to kind of line up or they seem to get there, but my big
Yeah.
accomplishment when I hit 40 this year was I'm finally debt free. So,
Ooh,
yeah, so I
congrats.
had college loans, I had car loans, and yeah, finally debt free.
No, that is like it is such a when you don't have any debt whatsoever. It's just like right, all that money it just stays with you, and it's a certain feeling when you don't have those commitments
Yeah,
lingering
yeah.
around. No, that's a big milestone.
So
Congratulations.
it's only up from here.
Yeah.
All right, want to move over to our topics then, I guess.
Yeah, to dive in.
So the one that I texted you last week that I wanted to talk about,
Mm.
it's about Japan and Japan's economy and
Yeah.
even what's going on with their whole situation related
Uh-huh.
to uh, their population.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
so it's interesting because I remember, I want to say it was before COVID. I think it's before COVID. I remember hearing stories of Japan of how like people there just weren't having babies,
Mhm.
and even uh, men and women just weren't having sex. Like
Yeah.
that was the whole thing coming out of Japan. It's like, ooh,
Right.
it's interesting. But fast forward to now, and this story that came up over the week was that Japan has hit record low marriages,
Mm.
causing record low births, and at the
Mhm.
same time, deaths per year. There's this chart that showed that I sent over to you that shows births per year going down
Yep.
and deaths per year going up, and deaths per
Mhm.
year are more than births per year. So really, what
Right.
that is a population decline.
Yep.
And so, according to the survey, 17% of men and 14% of women between the 18 and 34 said they had no intention of ever getting married. The
Mhm.
highest figure since this questionnaire was first conducted in 1982. A big reason for that is that men and women, their societal norms are changing, and so,
Yep.
well, first of all, we all know the work ethic in Japan is pretty. It's they
Hardcore.
work all the time,
Yeah.
and so men work all the time. Because of that, they don't feel like they can uh, be there for raise a family. Like they don't
Mhm.
have time to
Yeah.
have a child. On the flip side, women want more careers. And so,
Mhm.
because Japanese women want better careers, they feel like they don't want to have children because they want
Yeah.
to focus on their careers now. Whereas historically, traditionally, the men would work in Japan, right, and the woman would
Yeah.
kind of be more at home.
Yeah.
Um, Number of babies born in 2021 fell by about 3.5% year over year, and the population fell by a record 644,000 last year, and it's been the 11th consecutive year of decline in population.
Yeah.
So
It's been an issue for Japan like forever, where they just weren't producing enough babies. Like if you look at it, I guess what you were describing, right? It's like in case some people aren't really think about it, is like when you look at how many people die per year, right? Uh, health, whatever the health organization statistics are trying to look at, like on a yearly basis, like a country needs a certain birth rate in order to replace everybody who dies, right? And it ends up being like in the U.S., it's like 2.5 babies need to be born, you know, the birth rate in order to replace death. And then immigration is one way, at least the US has been able to maintain that, is like when you have immigrants, right? People are able to come in and kind of like increase, I won't say artificially, but just to increase those numbers. And so Japan, they're very homogeneous. They don't like immigrants, right? And so it's very difficult for immigrants to come to Japan, even though when we look at, pop culture today, it's like, oh man, everything Japan is so cool, right? I see on TikTok, it's like, oh, wow, this is Japan lives in the future. But they make it extremely difficult um, for people who want to go live there. And then there's that inherent, I guess there's a lot of lingering stuff.
I didn't know that.
Way
I didn't know that, but now that you
about,
say that,
uh-huh.
it makes sense because I remember, talk about two trips. One is when I went to Japan. One is when I
Mm-hmm.
went to Sydney, Australia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Went to Sydney, Australia, and I noticed it was pretty diverse. There was a ton of different
Yeah.
ethnicities,
Yeah.
lots of Asians, lots of
Mm-hmm.
Africans.
Yep.
When I went to Japan, now that you're saying that, I realized, yeah, it's mostly Japanese.
Yeah. It's very, very homogeneous nation. And some of that is also driven by like World War II, even though it was so long ago. Like because it's like two sides, right? Because Japan has such an old population, that old population remembers what happened during the war, and so they're very like adverse to immigrants in general, right? And it's just not talking about like immigrants from like the U.S., even immigrants from other Asian countries, right? There's also issues with that. Like there's still a lingering feud between like Korea and Japan
Yeah.
because of like wars that happened back in the day. But anyways, so having said that, yes. So Japan is like the far side of that spectrum, and I think a lot of Asian countries are also kind of experiencing this. Like China is definitely one, mainly driven by their one-child policy that they had forever.
Yeah, I know
Um,
India took over China, right, recently in terms of
yeah,
total
yeah.
population.
So China's having this same issue, kind of same things you were saying. Like they grind heavily, right? Marriage is not a priority, especially because of cost. I think you see that in a lot of countries now. Even Europe is starting to have these issues. But we'll see.
Well, I remember when I went to Japan, I met up with a friend of mine who I knew from high school. We
Hmm.
had when I grew up in Hawaii, as you know, and we had an exchange student from Japan who was with us for I think a year. I wasn't hosting him; he was just at the school being hosted by
Yeah.
someone else, and we reconnected when I went to Japan because he lives there, and I was talking to him about kind of his work and what he does, and yeah, he said he gets up, I think early, probably like 8, goes and works until maybe 5 or 6,
Hmm.
goes and like has dinner or a drink or something with
Hmm.
coworkers,
Hmm.
maybe takes a short nap, and then goes back to work. And he's basically
Yeah.
just working around the clock, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane.
Let's talk about one of your stories.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was, I guess, spending my days on TikTok, and this is a recently trending thing. So the calls for a boycott of all Kellogg's products, because the Kellogg CEO, what's his name, Gary Pilnick, he was on some interview, and he was saying, yeah, we think, you know, in this time where we know it's hard for people to buy food and such, it's like we think cereal is cereal for dinner is one of those alternatives that they
Oh
should
my god.
consider, etc. I mean, I'm abbreviating, but generally his just was like, yeah, poor people, because we know it's so hard, we want you to buy cereal and have cereal for dinner, and they've like built some weird campaign around it. And then I thought this was like, and so yeah, and so on TikTok, everybody's like boycott Kellogg's starting April 1st for like 3 months, because this guy, I mean, what was it? His like his comp package is like $5 million a year, and he's telling people like, yeah, he thinks cereal for dinner is a viable option in order to help you, kind of like meet not being able to afford real food. And so I think
Crazy.
this just highlights, not an ivory tower, but like how out of touch like these companies are, the leadership basically, with like real people, right? It's like, all right, Mr. CEO, why don't you try and live off of cereal for dinner for a month and see how you feel about it, right? And it's crazy that they think it's cereal. Okay, so two sides of this that where I thought it was interesting. From a business standpoint, it makes sense, right? So CPG, consumer product goods companies, right? They don't have a lot of ways in which to grow their business. It's either they take market share, which is sell more cereal, like of the cereal universe, sell more cereal, like take a bigger part of the pie, right? Or what they call is like they grow their category,
Mhm.
with different products, or drive more repeats, which is like more frequency, right? People outside of breakfast, where else can people eat cereal, right? And so you'll hear brand managers. This is kind of what goes through their mind. It's all right. The research says, oh yeah, what is this? Like 25% of people, eat cereal outside of the breakfast time. So where else? So they try to anchor it on dinner, of all things they could do, instead of like, maybe a small afternoon
After
snack or
snack.
a late
Yeah.
night snack. They go for dinner, like a meal. And so that's kind of like from the business side. Okay, I get it. They're just trying to look at different ways outside of the traditional breakfast of how to drive frequency to increase the revenue, right? But the approach is very tone deaf, because like
I try to
Kellogg's
open
has
up.
increased, and so it's like, they've increased their prices over 28% over like the past couple of years. And then when you look at it, cereal, like by pounds, it is expensive. It
Yeah.
is not a cheap solution. It's cheap if you like, oh yeah, I'm going to eat a small bowl of it. But if you look at it per pound, cereal is very expensive. Like you're better off buying bread, peanut butter, and like, like a piece of chicken and just grill it.
Yeah.
And so anyways, so I don't think they really, it was a very tone deaf um campaign or thing that they've just all of a sudden brought up. And
Yeah.
so, anyways,
It's
I just thought it was interesting.
no, it's very true that people like executives at the top are very tone deaf and not in tune with what's going on the ground.
Yeah.
Um, we see it all the time. And so I don't think there's, but I mean, question for you, coming from the
Hmm.
marketing background, like what, from a CEO's perspective, he may be tone deaf, but then from a marketing perspective,
Yeah.
like how would that, why did it pass the defense of the marketing team or the PR team?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I think, again, it's like they probably looked, they did their internal studies. They probably did a lot of data analysis that was showing, oh yeah, like if we thought between breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Where do we see where do we see the biggest gains, where they think they can make traction, right? And they probably did that outside, irrespective of other data that would show Well, why is that, right? It's because, yes, inflation,
Hmm.
right? Because people can't afford real food. And it's like it's this weird thing, right? Where it's like they know cereal is not the healthiest of choices, right? But because that's what they're trying to sell, it's
That's
like,
what the data
oh,
showed
well,
them.
okay.
Yeah.
The
They,
data showed
they weren't
them
user centric in their message at all.
exactly, right? Yes. And I think that's what happens a lot in CPG companies, right? It's not the product is what it is, right? It is consumption based,
Yeah.
right? And so they don't think that is not top of mind for them. Top of mind for them is how do we build the brand, right? So that when people go to to your grocery store, see cereals lined up on the shelves, what will they gravitate towards and buy, right? Because that's how they differentiate their product versus us on the tech side. It's really about like what the actual product is doing for
Mhm.
you on a whatever daily monthly basis, right? It's something you can change on the fly and iterate. But like Kellogg's, like Raisin Bran has been Raisin Bran for decades, right? You can't really change the product. What you change is the perception of the brand. But yeah, they
Well,
totally missed the mark on this on this part of it. And so I'll be interested to see, like, after, like, this boycott is supposed to take over the summer from April to June.
yeah.
So I'll be interested to see, like, if this actually impacts their numbers in any meaningful way. But
That was gonna be my
yeah,
question
it
to
was
you.
just
Like sometimes,
uh
you know, press is press is press, like good or bad.
yeah,
And so the
yeah,
question is,
yeah,
well, this is bad press, but is it gonna move the needle on sales?
yeah,
Because if it does, then what's gonna happen like next quarter?
yeah,
They'll be
yeah.
celebrating, right?
That's right. That's right. So yeah, well, I'll be interested to see. But yeah, this is like all over my TikTok feed, or just like people. Yeah, this is all people were talking about for the past couple of days. So I'm like, what is this about? It's like, oh,
That's
okay.
interesting. I didn't see it
Um,
in my TikTok feed, so
no,
my
I don't know
algorithm,
why.
which we talked
I
about
don't know what.
last week,
Right?
my algorithm didn't present this news to me. Well, I had another one on here that came up this week is OpenAI. We've been talking about OpenAI and AI, and
Yeah.
man, the drama just doesn't stop there. um, Elon Musk. Well, let's take a step back. For those of you who don't know the OpenAI drama that happened at the beginning of the year, the board of OpenAI ousted Sam Altman, and after they did that, there was a coup from employees um, that were backing Sam Altman. Didn't know why he was getting ousted. Satya Nadella from Microsoft made it a big point to say, no, this is important to us. So we're going to hire Sam Altman and
Yeah.
his whoever wants to come along to continue building AI at Microsoft.
Hmm.
After that was done, they hired a new CEO who was the CEO for I think a few hours, and
Right.
then decided to rehire Sam Altman. And then that was all like within a weekend. And
Yeah.
then once that was all
Yeah.
said and done, things were just back to normal. There was a new board that was established to not, prevent this in the future. The
Hmm.
crazy thing about that whole story was Sam Altman's co-founder was part of the ousting, the ousters who just
Yeah.
wanted him out.
Yeah.
Anyways, if you haven't heard about that story, you should look it up because it was a crazy weekend for sure. But
Yeah.
fast forward 2 months later, the whole reason why this happened, by the way, is because the board um, felt that Sam Altman wasn't delivering on his promise around kind of uh, non-profitable AI. The whole
Yeah.
thing about OpenAI was it was created as a nonprofit. The idea was to create AI for the world that's accessible, like open. That's why it's called OpenAI.
Hmm.
And they weren't supposed to necessarily be making money off of it. And when they launched ChatGPT and the whole news and the whole like and how it exploded and started charging for it, it's clear that, OpenAI has a business case and they want to profit from it. So that's why the board did it. Fast forward a few months. So fast forward of silence, a few months later, everything's going fine. Elon Musk last week sued OpenAI for the same
Mm-hmm.
reason. Says they abandoned the startup's original mission to develop artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity and not for profit.
Yeah.
Altman and co-founder Greg Brockman, he says they originally approached him to make an open source nonprofit company, but now they're making money. If you don't know, ChatGPT's subscription is about $22 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure their roadmap with DALL-E, with Sora, with everything coming out, their roadmap, those are profit-making like products for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the narrative and the goals of Sam Altman are probably changing, and so that's the whole reason why everything's going on here.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. What do you think about this
Yeah.
this story unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so yeah, OpenAI, they just have a lot of drama around them. And I guess one thing is, right, so Elon was part of OpenAI when they were initially founded, right? That was one of the things that he was pursuing. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, right, originally the mission of the company was really nonprofit. How do they make AI like benefit the world? But I guess, it's now that they've had such success with ChatGPT, I think that, and if you go and look at like kind of Altman's background, he's kind of a, what's the best description? Who's the founder of WeWork? I think I've seen a lot of comparisons of Altman to the original founder of WeWork, right? Where it's like he thinks he's like a god, basically.
Adam
Maybe
Newman.
that's a little bit.
Yeah.
Adam
Another
Newman, yes,
another example is Travis Kalanick,
yes,
Uber's
right,
founder.
yeah, where whether that's true or not. Again, I don't know Altman or anybody related to him. It's just what I read, in the news. But yeah, it's interesting. It's like, okay, so Elon is, Elon does Elon things. He's suing. He's probably not going to get, he's trying to get what, $45 million back that he originally invested. And it's like, it's like Elon. Yeah, this is Elon being Elon. He's not going to win.
He's sending a message,
right?
Basically.
He's
making a strong, bold statement to let the world know.
Yes, that he thinks OpenAI is not, and there's two sides. I mean, it's just convoluted, right? It's like, yes, a business. Again, this goes back to the point of a business is a business.
Yeah.
Right. It's like they started out with this mission of do for the greater good, but then it's like, oh, we struck product market fit, right? And so like, oh, right, we struck gold. We found product market fit, even though we weren't really looking for it. How can we turn this into the next, whatever, NVIDIA, right? The next $1 trillion company. So yeah, it's interesting to me just to see the transition from, oh, we're all about the good, but you know what? There's money to be made here, and basically create a monopoly around it, right? Or like first mover advantage in this case.
I mean, if I was in Altman's shoes, I'd probably do the same thing. It's like,
I would have probably done the same thing too, right? It's like I mean, they're making like $1 billion now off their subscription, which is insane if you think about. This product has only been in market for a year and a half now since they launched originally.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, how do you get the most return on money invested? And that's what drives.
Yeah.
That's what drives every company, regardless of what they say. And I think this shows it very clearly. Like, started out mission driven, and then the money changed that mission.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I, as many people are, very impressed with what they're doing, and so if them making money to actually better fund the advancement of what they're doing, and also like fund the security and de-risking AI, then I think
Hmm.
that's a good move in my opinion.
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will wait. It's like wait and see because with them going trying to grow big very fast as this first mover, then it's like, well, they will also move to limit AI, right?
Yeah.
So that they can control AI. Right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I've read some. I've read some interesting POV. It's like, well, not in a positive way, right? Not in a positive way, right? In a
Hmm.
negative way where they want to control, like being able to dictate where AI goes, if that makes sense, right? From a policy perspective, of like, oh yeah, you need to have regulations to require this, this, and this, right? Which as a small startup is very difficult to do, versus when you're the entrenched kind of like incumbent. Again, this is like similar to the App Store, or Amazon's dominating e-commerce and retail at this point. And so it's like, anyways, we'll see. Again, because they've moved away
Yeah.
from their original mission, right? Their goal is to, how do we keep OpenAI at the top and prevent other startups from
Right.
taking advantage of AI, right? We'll see.
Um.
Next 10 years should be interesting.
Yeah. So we'll continue following this OpenAI drama. It's very, very
Yeah.
dramatic.
Yeah.
Um. All
Uh,
right. Do you want to talk about iCar?
yeah, another big thing that has not necessarily rocked the tech world, but everybody's like, what, how, why? So the Apple quote iCar is officially no more.
Yeah.
So the news out is Apple has finally decided to stop any development on their car vision, or their Apple Car Vision. Teams have been, I guess, some teams laid off and then reallocated to AI.
Yeah.
So we'll have tons of Apple AI news to talk about in the coming months. But yeah, no, it's again just big news from right, because it's Apple. Their car has been in development for like 10 years. What were some of the numbers? They were like sunk like $10 billion into this project so far. But yeah, I just
How
thought
much does
that's
Apple have in
like
the bank?
a
You
couple
see,
100 million, right?
400 billion. You mean?
Several 100 million, several hundred. Oh no, like,
No, Apple
do you
has
mean actual
like
cash?
yeah, Apple has probably like billions, if not a trillion, in the bank.
73 billion. Oh, okay, never mind. 73 billion in cash and equivalents.
Yeah, so 10
So
billion is
over 10 years it's a drop in the bucket. Yeah.
yeah,
So this is, again, like at the scale of Apple, right? 10 billion is nothing for them to explore.
yeah. But then you think,
Again, diverse.
well, all those layoffs, man.
Yeah, more layoffs. But I think they've had so much turnover in their car leadership that I
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's really surprised. But I guess some people thought Apple would try and power through. But if you look at the reasons why they cancel it, again, this goes back to one, is they couldn't find product. They couldn't determine like what their actual product market fit was. Like, what were they doing
hmm
by launching this car? Um, yeah.
well,
So like this, like sometimes like diversifying doesn't work, right? It's like it it might have made sense when they initially like, oh, this is the business plan. This is what we're gonna do, and then they finally discovered like this is not what we do.
yeah.
We can't make this work.
I mean, building a car is logistically complex as well,
Yeah,
and Apple's got logistics down for hardware, but nothing at the size of a car.
yeah,
So I'd be interested how they solve that problem. I think
yeah,
it's clear. Maybe a big decision is they want to go all in AI, similar to what we were talking about.
yeah,
OpenAI, Microsoft are there.
yeah,
Google is kind of there. They're launching. It was Bar, but now it's Gemini.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
then how can Apple get into this game? Because Siri is an example of AI that's been around for a while, but you probably
Yeah.
never associate it with AI,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but it's for the I don't know myself, and I don't know how many people have used Siri often. I think
Yeah.
I've noticed Siri has actually evolved a bit in the last year or two, but
Oh,
I had no
really?
clue.
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I discovered that accidentally when I was using Siri, and the reason why I discovered it was because of ChatGPT. I was asking
Oh.
myself, "Huh, can Siri
Uh-huh.
answer some of these questions?" And I was actually surprised when Siri did answer them correctly because
Yeah.
5 years ago I would have had no faith in Siri.
Right.
So yeah, I think like that's one thing. Like I talked about, this AI is the new experience in a wave of the
Mm-hmm.
internet. I think Apple needs to get in there if they want to compete. And then I also think um their whole head, like Apple Vision Pro, spatial, and all that stuff. That's probably
Mm-hmm.
another area of investment that they're probably going
Yeah.
bigger
They
on
decided
since
has more traction.
yeah,
Yeah.
since Zuck threw the gloves down. Like,
Yes.
I'll show you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think those are going to be the two main focuses of primary investment for Apple in the next few years
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely probably like that's one of the things that made them come to this decision, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're probably ahead of where they wanted the car to be. Meaning, I think what was that I was reading? So it was like their goal was to get to level 4, level 5 autonomy for the car, right? Because they didn't want you'd have to do anything, but they could only figure out that they could only get to 2.
Hmm.
And it's like when you look at the leader, Tesla is also at the same boat, right? They've talked about getting it to the 4 or 5, but really, autopilot is just a level 2
Yeah.
autonomous assistant. And so I think they just like the technology is just not there for them to be able to create their vision and doing what Apple does. Like, all right, we're
Right.
gonna cut and let's shift focus. What I so again, not financial advice, but I've started loading up a little bit on Apple because I fully expect maybe this is the year when at their WWDC Worldwide Developer Conference
Mhm.
that they'll announce some of their AI things. And I think what you said on improvements on Siri is like if they can do like on-device AI with iPhones,
Yeah.
I think that could be a game changer.
Totally.
Well, game changer in the sense that it basically puts like the model right at your fingertips, literally at your fingertips.
People are used to this with Alexa, and oh crap,
Right.
she just prompted. But that's how you know when something's, like you said, product market fit, but also that something
Yeah.
is starting to really work,
Yeah.
because we're used to this. We're used to using these voice prompts now. It's just
Yeah.
I'm not used to asking Siri for that because there's no level
Right.
of confidence or trust.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that should be
Yeah.
one of Apple's goals is they
Yeah.
need to see usage of Siri
Yeah.
daily, much like a lot of us
Yeah.
use, our Amazon devices.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah, I think
yeah.
from a stock perspective, I've been paying attention to Apple. I have I have stake in Apple.
Hmm.
Been waiting for opportunities to buy more. But what I've seen,
Yeah.
what I've seen though in the last, I'd say 3 weeks here, is consolidation. It's been
Yeah.
just hovering around the 180 mark for the last
They've been
couple.
defending that 180 mark
Mhm.
quite heavily. Yeah.
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 So I think you're right there, and in starting to accumulate
Yes.
it.
Buy the rumor and then sell the news, right? So
Yeah.
the
One
rumor
of the
is they'll do something.
related the rumor one of the rumors that came up related to this Apple decision is it still makes sense for them to enter the car market somehow, right?
Hmm.
So one of the rumors is that they would like, not financial advice, so take this with a grain of salt because it is a rumor,
Hmm.
is that they would look to either partner or acquire Rivian to actually do this.
Mm.
So Rivian, I talked about Rivian last week, the earnings, and
Hmm.
again, I'm bullish on Rivian, so I'm waiting
Hmm.
for an entry point to actually do it. But I think because of this rumor,
Mm-hmm.
And Rivian is announcing their new car this week. I'll
Oh, the
probably,
R2. That's right.
yeah, I'll probably,
Oh, that's right.
I'll probably look to enter into some leaps here,
Mm-hmm.
Monday, just to get to build off of this stuff.
Yeah. I guess I could average down. Maybe I'm down so much. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, that would be interesting, right? I mean, there is CarPlay, so it makes sense. Like, what can Apple do from an OS perspective? And then Rivian, well, they haven't fully demonstrated their manufacturing prowess. But if they can figure it out, then yeah, that could make sense. It's like, Apple helps on the OS front, and Rivian's really about the manufacturing.
Because I don't think Rivian
Yeah.
has, I don't think Rivian has an autopilot or like a full self-driving.
I remember that they've talked about it, but it's like any EV car. It's like, oh yeah, this is how we're helping you. But
Yeah,
um,
yeah, we'll see.
interesting.
We'll
Okay,
learn more about Apple's
maybe I
car
will.
plans as the year progresses, right?
Maybe I'll double down. Just
I think
average
the
average
other one
down a
they've
bit.
been that's
Yeah.
that's all you can do is have faith and be
Yeah.
hold for the long term.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good transition to the last thing I wanted to bring up to close out, and that is
Yeah.
Tesla superchargers. So last
Mm.
year, at the end of last year, there is some big news around several manufacturers choosing Tesla supercharging as the new standard of charging for them, or at
Mm-hmm.
least being able to um, charge on superchargers because Tesla has a great network. I mean, everywhere I drive my car, I don't worry about driving and taking a road trip because I know there's going to be a supercharger close by. Last year, Ford was one of the first manufacturers that can now charge on Tesla's supercharging network.
Mm-hmm.
So you can charge a Ford EV using an adapter. Um, and the other one that's going to be happening this month, which we just talked about, is Rivian's. So Rivian's are also going to start using superchargers to charge their cars. Rivian has their own network as well, but it's
Yep.
much smaller than Tesla's. So I think in
Yep.
this case, it makes sense to
Yep.
piggyback off of what's going on.
Yep.
Um, as you know, I talked about last week, I am a Tesla owner, and my main concern is, well, are these superchargers going to get super busy now? I don't
Yeah.
actually use superchargers very much. The only time I use them is when I take a road trip or drive,
Mm-hmm.
down to Portland or more than 2 hours away.
Yep.
But it is a concern. I mean, there are horror stories of Teslas. I think you talked about it last time, right? Where Teslas are just stuck or they didn't have
Yep.
charge and they couldn't,
Yep.
um, charge fast enough, and so their cars got abandoned.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see, but Tesla is constantly adding more superchargers across the nation,
Mm-hmm.
and they also, what I read is that they're going to
Mm-hmm.
reserve their faster ones for Tesla models only. There's probably
Mm.
some. I don't think it's necessarily a exclusivity thing. I think it's more of a compatibility thing. Like, can
Mm.
these Fords and these Rivians handle the faster
Yeah.
supercharging? I think it's more
Yep.
of that risk
Mm.
versus, but it's good to position it in a way where, hey, Tesla owners, we're going to reserve the faster ones for
Yeah.
you.
It's a benefit if you have an actual Tesla,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, that's good news for Tesla.
Mm.
5 years from now, Tesla's going to be the EV charging standard. I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah. Apparently, but we'll see. I'll probably be a hybrid owner in 5 years. So we'll see.
All right. So join us next time. And if you like what we're hearing, hit that like button, subscribe.
Yeah. Subscribe, hit that like button, turn on notifications. God, there's so many things you have to do now on YouTube. But yeah, do all those things. And then yeah, leave us a comment below what we could do better, what you want to hear us talk about. And yeah,
We'll see you next week.
see you next week. Bye.